Entering the Mayo experience.
Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Mayo experience. Experience.
Welcome to the Pat Mayo Experience, American Express research, picks, guess the odds, course preview. Have it all in store for you as you get a kickoff to the golf week. You can always hit the time code to jump to the spot where you want to go. But hey, I like to talk for like 45 minutes. Some people say that they like to listen or watch for 45 minutes. They're probably lying, but it's nice that they placate me in that sort of way. But if you want to do the same, and at least make me feel good about it, smash the like, sub to the channel, and sub to the audio podcast, and join FantasyNational.com. FantasyNational.com/Mayo will get you 20% off all of the tools, any of the memberships, and that's what I'm doing my walkthrough with every single week on the research show, so you can see what I do on the screen, and then you can say, like, hey, Pat missed that part. I can go check that out myself. You want to do, if you're concerned about doing your own research, FantasyNational.com is where you need to be, all right? FantasyNational.com/Mayo, and I do know if you want some color with a lot of the research that goes along with it, Tambo is doing a giveaway over at ShipItNation.com right now. If you sign up for any of the memberships, weekly, monthly, annual, with code Mayo, not only do you get 10% off with code Mayo, you also get put in a draw to get your membership upgraded to a free year regardless of the membership level that you go into. Tambo and I will be giving away that winner on Tuesday's DraftKings Pick Show, so keep your eye out for that if you want to get into it. All right, the field at the American Express, if you want the quick Coles Notes version, it's pretty strong. To tell you the God's honest truth, it has Scotty Scheffler, the #1 player in the world, and we'll dig deeper into the field a little bit later on, and then we have a few guys making their season debuts, and one guy who feels like he's been at a golf for 10 years at this point is seemingly playing this week. But we're getting Lowry, Minwoo, and Justin Thomas back in our lives. And Daniel, how's your Berger? Yeah, Berger time. He's back, apparently, after missing a year and a half with a back problem. So that is going to be very exciting to see. Everyone knows that. Everyone who's been a fan of the Pat Mayo Experience, or hell, even the Pat Mayo Hour back in the day, knows how much we love Daniel Berger on this program. So it'll be interesting to see how he does. Probably don't want to fire off at Daniel Berger right now. A lot like how when Tambo and I have the discussion about Will Zalatoris at the Sony, I understand his reasoning of why he played like a 4% Will Zalatoris, but I just didn't want to take that leap. I didn't know where he was at. And we'll dig into how he actually did statistically, because a lot of it on Thursday was, granted, putting. And we know he's a terrible putter. So a lot of that stuff takes a little bit longer to come back. And we'll see if his ball striking was any good. We'll take a deeper look at Woodland as well to see how he is doing coming off the brain surgery that happened in the fall and where his game is at the moment, and maybe how we can project him out going forward. But it's not just Scheffler in this tournament and the guys coming over. We have Xander, we have Cantlay, Sungjae plays this tournament every single year. So it's a very strong field. Here's the issue, though. It's a 3-course rotation for the American Express at PGA West. There is only one of the courses that has shot link, that has cameras at it, and that's the Stadium course, the Pete Dye course. But there's also the Nicholas course, there's La Quinta. They're all super easy courses. You can get into trouble a little bit on PGA West. So let's take a look at that right now in the course itself. It is a POA green. So it's POA overseeded at this time of the year. Par 72, 7,187 yards. The greens are pretty small. They're some of the smallest on the PGA Tour. I actually wrote down a list of the smallest greens on the PGA Tour. Pebble Beach is the smallest at 3,500. Harbor Town, after that, 3,700. TPC Southwind, 4,300 for the St. Jude. Albany for the Hero, who really cares? Those are 45. La Quinta at 4,700. PGA West at 5,000. So the fifth and sixth smallest greens on the PGA Tour in regular rotation are two of the courses in this tournament. And then you have the Nicholas course, which has 7,000 square foot greens. So those ones are super easy to hit. For years, the Stadium course, the Pete Dye course, was the more difficult of the bunch. But in later years, it's just, you can still score there, no problem. We see it. I mean, Siwoo shot a 64 to go win this tournament 3 years ago when they actually just split and took out La Quinta during the COVID year. So it's very scoreable. It's just there's a ton of bunkers laying around. There's a ton of water hanging around this course as well. Like overall, when we take a look at the stadium course, it has 90 plus bunkers, 7 holes with bunkers in play. So it's... Big numbers are afoot. Like everyone always remembers those like death bunkers where they're like 8 feet down or 80 feet down on the side of a hill. So like if you're just playing well, you can score really well. Probably the course with the most 77s throughout the week is going to be the stadium course, but you wouldn't want those guys anyway because it sounds like they're playing terrible. But you can score any of the courses, so I wouldn't pay too much attention to some of the other ones. Now, if you're playing Showdown, we can get into that in a second. The stadium course, like I said, is pretty good. If you're getting cute, front to back holds a slight edge this week in terms of DraftKings Showdown, only because, if you play the back, you go 3-4. Those are the third, 17 and 18 are 2 of the 4 hardest holes on the course. So if you just start on the front, you're unlikely to get a wraparound that way. You're probably better off trying to manage through 8, 9, and 10 because 8 is a par 5. It has a 2% eagle rate. The big difference really between the stadium course and the other 2 courses in the rotation. This is a 54-hole cut. Everyone is guaranteed 3 rounds. It's a Pro-Am. It's not a Pro-Am like Pebble Beach because like Bill Murray and Clint Eastwood aren't there. It's like Carlton from Fresh Prince and Ray Romano, maybe. Like Ray Romano's stunt double is one of the celebrities, more than likely, at this one. So they don't really show that part of it. So that's the stadium course in terms of the wraparound. The eagle rate, the highest one of the 4 par 4s, is 2.5%. So if we take a look at the Nicklaus course, PGA West Nicklaus, you'll see that in terms of DraftKings Showdown, I mean, everyone gets one crack at each of these courses, but the eagle rate of this course is just much higher. All 4 of the par 4s have an eagle rate of over 4%. So just that alone, I mean, there's one, number 16 has a 6% eagle rate, which is just kind of crazy. There's going to be streaks at this course, but it doesn't really seem to matter whether you start on the front or back. I don't even know if they're doing split tees because you're going to separate the field of 156 over the course of the 3 days. I mean, they probably still will because it's a stupid Pro-Am and they're super slow. Let's take a look at La Quinta. Historically, the easiest of all the courses. It's actually not necessarily that it has played tougher over other years, just Nicklaus and the stadium course have just played easier over the course of the past few years. So honestly, this one has an eagle rate of all the par 4s over 2%. There's one at 4.4, 3.6, 3.6. So pretty easy. If you want to get contrarian, fewer people will go to the stadium course because that's always the prevailing narrative that the stadium course is a little bit harder. And granted, when you take a look at the actual scores, the scores per round, then you're absolutely right. But we're talking about Showdown, you still need to have the best scores of the day, and those still can happen at the stadium course. You just need to get a little bit luckier. So if it's one of these situations where you're playing for first and everything else that's not first is last, that it really depends on the rotation as well. All of the best players in this tournament are likely to play the stadium course on Saturday. So that gives them a huge advantage because they can go Saturday, Sunday at the same course on back-to-back days. And the reason that they do that is because all of the cameras are at the stadium course. All the shot link is at the stadium course. So if you're the TV network who is running this tournament, you say to yourself, I need to have Scotty Scheffler and Patrick Cantlay and Ricky Fowler and Tom Kim and Jason Day and Justin Thomas in my window that I have paid a lot of broadcasting fees for on Saturday. If you're the bigger network, that's why the rotation works that way. It's very similar to Pebble Beach over the years. Now, it's not going to be the same this year because that's an elevated event, but usually all the best players would play the dinky courses on Thursday and Friday where there are no cameras, and as soon as the actual broadcast cameras, the network cameras are there, they would be playing that on Saturday, and then you get the back-to-back repeat, and boom, you're off to the races. So that's the course itself. Honestly, Because you're dealing with 3 courses, like we'll take a look at the stadium course because that's the only one that has like actual data to go along with it in terms of proximity ranges and anything that's strokes gained related in terms of a shot by shot approach. That's the only way that we're going to get any numbers here. So you can be duped into thinking something like, when we take a look at Jon Rahm, who's won this tournament 2 of the past 5 years, he won a year ago and he lost 2.5 strokes putting last year. But those numbers are only from the stadium course. So you can make the case that, hey, Jon Rahm won this tournament by losing strokes putting. Chances are he didn't lose strokes putting at the other courses, and that's where he was able to make up a lot of strokes. Now, he played great tee to green to go along with that. It wasn't a great putting week from Jon Rahm, but you only have 2 rounds of data to look at from this tournament. And spoiler alert, there's 4. There used to be 5 at this tournament. There used to be a 5-round one. Thank God they got rid of that. That just sounds awful. So when we take a look at the finishers, Jon Rahm has famously called this a fucking putting contest, and he's not wrong, but you need your approaches to go along with it as well. We take a look at the top 5. It gets even more pronounced between approaches and putting. Around the green starts to mean a little bit less. But if we're just looking for players to finish top 20 or make the cut, around the green inches up a little bit closer to off the tee, where approach and putting level itself out a little bit. If we talk about just cut makers in general, everything becomes a little bit more flatter with, again, approach and putting, not breaking any new ground here that approach is important at a tournament. Par 5 scoring worth a little bit more. Par 3 scoring, strangely enough. And that's just for cut makers, guys who make the cut. So you can see that the par 3s mean a little bit more than the par 4s in terms of strokes gained of just making the cut. When we search that to top 5, it's actually pretty level itself. So par 3s, and there are some tough par 3s at this course. Everyone kind of remembers it's sort of the mimic of, this is a Pete Dye course. It's TPC. The stadium course at PGA West is a TPC course, the Pete Dye course, very similar to Sawgrass in that way. We're number 17. Well, it's not an island green. It is a peninsula green. It's basically an island green. There's like rocks everywhere on this course as well. Duffner, when I thought I used to be the king of this tournament. I had Duffner to win 45-1 over Lingmerth. I want to say in like 2014, 2015. He put it into the rocks in the playoff against Lingmerth and had a beautiful chip out of those rocks to make the par and ended up extending it, beating Lingmerth and cashing us our money. That was the year that Danny Willett won the Masters because I translated that money into a big bet on Danny Willett at the time. And I know a lot of people who were fans of the Pat Mayo Hour at that point did the same thing. So this tournament will always be really fond in my heart because the Duffner win got me to put more money down than I would have on Willett at the price it was in the middle of January, which ended up paying for most of my wedding. So that's why people were able to have fun at my wedding, and I was able to afford that. It's crazy how some of that stuff works out over time. So there's one par 3 that's very easy at the stadium course. Number 4, it's not easy, but it does play below par, making it the rank, it's about even. It's break even. But the other ones, number 13, number 6, and number 17, the 3 hardest holes at PGA West. All of them play over par. Number 17 only plays slightly over par, but you can see there's just big double or worse numbers because of the water that goes along with it. Not a huge birdie rate, only 16%, but the highest on the course of doubles or worse, 8.2% of the players that play this hole will end up making double or worse. Only a 7% bogey rate, which is sort of the inverse, and that makes sense because there's the water in play of number 13 and number 16, where 1 in 5 players are going to make bogey every time they play number 13, and almost the same for number 6, but the double or worse rate is like 5%. So all of a sudden, it's 1 in 20 making double or worse instead of 1 in 10 making double or worse. So there are blow-up holes on this course. Your guys can just kind of get through that, either have a good bounce back percentage or have a good bogey avoidance, but it's really tough to translate bogey avoidance when water starts getting brought into play on a par 3 because one bad bounce, one crooked bounce, and you're absolutely cooked when it comes down to it. So you can see the distribution in average shot, the plurality of shots coming from 150 to 175 at this course. But if you can find someone who's very good from 200 plus, that's going to translate at all of these courses, and that's how you generate eagles at this course, which is what you want. The cut is not going to happen until after round 3. You can see the historic cut line, -7 a year ago, -6, -6, -5. It's only getting easier. It's -9 in 2019. And this is a full field, 156 players. And this field is a little bit stronger than we've seen over the years as well. So I would expect it to be probably at least -7. I got so sidebar here. I got so screwed at the Sony by that stupid fucking cut line and stupid Joel Dahmen missing the 4-foot putt to make it -3. I mean, if you watch the show this week, Tambo and I built, I think, 9 lineups on the show. I think 4 or 5 of them were pure 6s with -3 at the cut line. I basically had no one at -2. Yeah, like that I used in my player pool. I faded Connors. I faded Hideki. I faded Svensson. All the fades that I had ended up at -2. And then all of a sudden I'm sitting here like I lost Glover at -1. It's not like I had 100% 6 of 6, but all my 6 of 6s had no one at -2. They were all -3 or better. So what happens? Missed 4-footer. It was, I believe Data Golf had it at 88% at one point to be -3, which, by the way, if I'm saying here's what the cut line is likely to be, here's what it could be, I don't need you to tell me what Data Golf says in terms of the percentages. I too have the internet and can fucking look at it myself. I understand what it is. What I try to do when I talk through those things is explain why that number comes to be or how the cut line works to people that may not know. So yes, I also have the internet. I've heard of Data Golf. I can look that up myself. Thank you very much. I'm still fucking pissed off because of the -2 cut line. Because I had one of the best teams in the 150, and I think it would have been me and 2 other people with a 6 of 6 left, and now it's me and 35 other people. I'm probably going to min cash in the 150, and I probably would have been almost guaranteed top 3 in that tournament, and the $88 as well, where I probably would have had a good run at top 5, which I think is at least 5K each of the top 5 spots. Now I'm probably not going to cash because everyone has a 6 of 6. Pissing me off. It sucks. Anyway, that's my sidebar. Back to the course this week, where the course is this week at the American Express. What else do we got going on here? Lower driving accuracy. Driving accuracy can come into play a lot here, especially at PGA West, because wayward drives like the rough is nothing, but you start inching a little bit further away from the rough, and then you got some real problems on the go. Green regulation's a little bit higher, scrambling a little bit higher. You can see the single rounds, the distribution. You're right around 70, which is 2 under, which is the plurality in terms of score. But you can see guys go as low as 63, 64. Like, it's not crazy to think that. Very small greens means very few 3-putts, unless you're like the guys that I bet on, because then they'll 3-putt from 5 feet. But either way, I shouldn't say that. I have 2 guys inside the top, of the betting odds at the moment. I'm filming this on a Saturday morning to get the research done. Cam Davis and Chris Kirk are 2nd and 3rd in odds, and I have bet on both of them, so hopefully one of those guys can come through. Driving distance a little bit down because there are some forced layups at this course, and yeah, that's where we're going with all this. By the way, I'm going to have my column in my newsletter now. The newsletter is free to subscribe to, and then it will just get sent to you. I'm going to try to plan to have it out. I don't know if I want to do it on, probably Monday afternoon after I do the show with Jeff. So if we do make any bets, I can include those into the show and write those up for everyone to go through it. But it's completely free, and a lot of people don't know that it's moved off of DK Network into my newsletter. So if you could share it around, I'll put the share button at the top. I would just really appreciate that, just because I know that people are looking for it, and I don't have time to go and tell every single person who is used to finding it in one place for the past 7 years. It's now in a different spot. I need to figure out a way to let them know where to find the full article. So the more people you could tell, the better off it would be for me, and I would really appreciate that. So thank you. Smash a like while you're here as well. Jumping back in, probably time to look at what has happened at this tournament over the past few years. We have some tournament history. We have a lot of tournament history at this course. Again, John Rahm won a year ago. Davis Thompson came in 2nd. Chris Kirk. Chris Kirk just riding a heater here. Maybe he can go back to back to back to open the year. Wouldn't that be something? Xander was T3. Montgomery was by himself in 5th. Cashed that each way for us, which was nice last year, but he hit the struggle bus midway through the 4th round before kind of getting it back together, but only after he had taken himself out of the tournament. Tom Kim, JT Poston. Matty Schmidt, very interesting here, because Matty Schmidt had a very nice end to the season, the swing season, when he was playing overseas, and even there, he birdied 3 of his 4 final holes a year ago to finish T6, and he entered the week with 4 missed cuts and 6 starts during the swing. So Matty Schmidt's someone I've just had my eye on. throughout the course of the last year or so. We've talked about him a little bit on this show. I think I did last week. I don't even know if he played in the Sony, but he had a bad RSM, and then he went overseas and played really well on the DP World Tour. But you can see he just has a lot of different spike weeks here. This is the best tournament besides the Barbasol. He had the Nationwide. He was 6th at the American Express. It was his best result of last year, but you can see that he can click. He has no short game, but as we saw, the short game isn't super pronounced at this course. He was 3rd in Bermuda as well, another course that's a little bit shorter, and he's a big hitter, so maybe that's the way that he can conquer it, and has very small greens as well. So just someone to look at, especially if he comes down in the pricing a little bit. Scotty Scheffler, in his career, a T11, a T25, he was cut, and a T3, so good on him for continuing to come and be an ambassador for PGA West, even more important for the tour, because they're losing Farmers Insurance as a title sponsor of Torrey Pines, I believe, next year. So keeping American Express placated with some of your bigger names is going to be very important, and something that the tour needs to get into at the same time to protect some of these sponsors if they want the money to continue to come in. But where this is a putting contest, probably not the best for Scotty Scheffler. He's going to lead everyone tee to green. This we know. Can he be top 5, top 10 in putting to go along with that? It's unlikely. I mean, we've seen him win tournaments losing strokes putting. It's not crazy to think of, but this course is easy enough that feels like you're gonna need to make your putts in order to be up there. So to bet him outright, when we try to guess the odds at the end of the show, I just don't think the number for how much variance in this tournament relies on putting. It's just I just can't do it with him, but it does. Seeing him in this tournament, like seeing him and Rahm a year ago in this tournament, made it kind of crazy to think about when it came to betting the rest of the field. And like Davis Thompson and Montgomery were getting there at bigger odds, but Rahm in the end just ended up being the guy who won at -27. Rahm posted a 65 or better in each of his first 3 rounds. That just gave him enough breathing room. His 68 on Sunday almost got Xander back into it from 8 strokes back. Xander shot 62 at the Stadium course, so it's doable. And that was coming off of injury. We didn't know where his game was at the time, and he struggled a little bit through the first little bit, but he ended up coming T3 at the course. We've seen Davis Thompson obviously do a little bit well. Once again, these stats are only from the Stadium course. So again, keep that in mind. So when you see that, again, Rahm lost 2.5 strokes putting, he did shoot 65 the first 3 days. 2 of those were not weighted at this particular course. There's Matty Schmidt. He's so nice. He's in there twice. So it has Matthias Schmidt and the Matty Schmidt in the system. I believe he is now just Matty Schmidt in the system. Tom Kim kind of got it back together a little bit. When we guess the odds, I'm interested to see where he ends up coming in once we start thinking it through, because when you have a Scheffler and Cantlay and Xander in the field, they're going to suck up a lot of oxygen. And hell, if Chris Kirk wins again at Sony, he's going to be like 10-1 or something crazy like that. But we can't put that in our minds, or our mind movies, once we start doing the odds, because obviously we don't know what the future is going to be in this situation. Tom Hoge has some decent results. You can see he was 32nd a year ago. Bad off the tee, too, kind of crippled him at the Stadium course. But as we go to like strokes gained total of this course, you can see Hollywood Hoge has 2 top 6 finishes in the past 4 years. We'll take a look at 2022 in a moment. But other guys with at least 2 top 10s in the past 5 years. You have Cantlay. I mean, Siwoo has a 1st and an 11th, so we're going to include him. We're going to include Sung Jae as a 10th, 11th, 12th, and 18th. He's finished top 20 each of the past 5 years, and he was obviously a birdie-making machine at Kapalua. That might be the look for here is Sung Jae Im. I mean, just first impression, that's where my mind goes. Hadwin has the course record at La Quinta with 59. That was the year that they couldn't get, I believe that was 2019, the year that he lost into the playoff with... Maybe that wasn't the same year, because Phil lost in the playoff. Phil and Hadwin lost in the playoff to Adam Long, of all people, who won this at 600-1 in a fucking putting contest. When you putt great, You can win this tournament. It can happen. Like, we've seen Andrew Landry win this at huge odds. We have seen, Adam Long is just out of nowhere. Hudson Swafford had won this in 2017 and 2022, both at triple digits. Maybe not the first one, because he had been having some pretty solid ball striking. Like, Reed, Duffner, Bill Haas are all winners here. Johnny Vegas is a winner here. It's really tough to peg down what type of player. The only thing that I can think of that has a link of all these players is just aggressive at the pin. That's the only thing I can think of. And it's really hard to quantify that. I guess by opportunities gained, we could try that. But I don't know. It's a difficult one because a lot of it just hinges on putting. Putnam's actually played really well at this. Really well. He's like the 7th most strokes gained over the past 5 years. But he has a top 10. He has a T24. He's made the cut every single time. Not that just making the cut is going to do that much for you. 5 of 6, if you can upload inside the top 10 on DraftKings this week, can do a little bit better because all players are guaranteed 3 of it. Wyndham Clark is in the field. It's funny to see him. Like, you kind of forget that he's a top 10 player in the world right now. But he is up here. Lonto is back. Taylor Montgomery, good in his first start. So you can be pretty good in your first start. In 2022, as I mentioned, Hudson Swafford won for the second time. Hoagie, Lonto, Hodges, Zalatoris, Denny, Cantlay, Long Dong, Paul Barjon, who is the Frenchman. So he is the Long Dong, the Barjon, huh? Maybe he wins the tournament, eh? Probably not. Sung J.M., Siwoo, Wyndham Clark, Kazire's up there. Lipsky's had a bad run of it. Nick Taylor has never really been all that good at this course. Finau's been good. He lost to Siwoo coming down the stretch. Doug Gim, he has the 1T5, but usually Pete Dye courses are where you want to be at with him. Landry has a win. Adam Long has a win. They haven't done anything since. Fowler, he has played well at some desert courses in the past. Maybe this could be another one. Just taking a look at 2022, though, the year that Swafford won. A lot of irons, a lot of putting. There's your simple strategy, plus dominate the 2 easier courses that we had on the go. Francesco Molinari was here that year. Harmon also finished inside the top 3 that year. I think this is the year that Rahm was losing his mind. Sungjae, tee to green, I think played better than anyone at the stadium course. He did, but lost strokes putting. Ditto for Lee Hodges. He ended up losing strokes putting. Him and Berger, I believe, were in the final group going into Sunday. It was not a ratings bonanza in 2022 with Swafford hunting down Lee Hodges and Berger going through it. And Tom Hoagie. Can't forget Tom Hoagie in that mix. But then Hoagie would go on to win Pebble like a month or 3 weeks later or whatever it was. Missed out on that one too. Good times. So that's what we're looking at in terms of course history right now. I guess we can jump back over and just really do a deeper dive on the field. As I mentioned, we have number 1 player in the world, Scotty Scheffler. He is here. He also leads all players in strokes gained total over the past 50 rounds. Cantlay, Xander, Wyndham Clark, Zalatoris. Oh, that's why I want to do the deeper dive on Z and Woodland too. I would say remind me to do that before I get into the modeling, but you're not actually here with me. You are just listening to me in a odd parasocial relationship that obviously you can't do that. So I will try to remind myself. I wrote it down on the sheet in front of me, although, see, look, writing it down on the sheet in front of me right now. Zalatoris, Woodland, see how they did at Sony Open on Fantasy National. That should be good. Back to the screen. So Scheffler, Xander, Cantlay, Clark, Zalatoris are your top 5 in their past 50 rounds. Eric Cole is up there as well. So is Poston, McCarthy, Noren, and the Gim Reaper. Tom Kim, Bo Hostler, Mark Hubbard, Shane Lowry, Ricky Fowler, Lee, Daniel Berger. I wonder when his rounds go back to. So Berger hasn't played since the U.S. Open in 2022. So his 50 rounds go back as far as 2021. Spoiler alert, it is 2024 for those of you who hate calendars or time in general. But yeah, Steven Jaeger, you know what? Jaeger makes a ton of birdies. Maybe this is finally the week that Jaeger gets it done. Hell, maybe he ends up winning at Sony. Who knows? I don't even know if he made the cut, but because I didn't bet him, didn't really care. But he has made the most consecutive cuts. He's made every cut since the RBC Heritage last year, and he is an aggressive player off the tee or with his approaches. Like Hunter Mahan used to be like this. I would say Molinari was that type of player who's had some good run here in the past. Min Woo is most definitely that type of player. Obviously, we know that Scheffler is. Can't lay, can be, cannot be. He can adjust his game, but like Scheffler has never found a pin he doesn't want to fire at. Patrick Reed was very much the same way. Chris Kirk is kind of the same way. Min Woo's that way. I wouldn't say, I don't know if Tom Kim is or Siwoo most definitely is. So Siwoo, I mean, there's a reason that he's probably won at this tournament. This course rewards shot makers and players who want to be aggressive, but it will also be very penal to people who are too aggressive but don't have the goods to go along with it, because then you're proper fucked as we get there and you end up having double or worse with a lot of this stuff. All right, so let's shrink down the size. I actually didn't build out a model for this course, so we can think about what we want to do for that. Let's just go to the Sony Open, though, because I want to do Sony, Zalatoris, and Woodland just to see how they did at this tournament. So you have to put it back to Sony, whatever Sony one that you want, and then we'll go to in-tournament stats, and you can take a look at how the players have done. You switch over to total, and there we go. You can see, the winners right now, Ben An. That's where we're sitting right now. So it'd be nice if, let's see, Ben An could go away, but not too far away because I have him on DraftKings. I just don't have an outright bet on him. I would prefer that Chris Kirk or Cameron Davis end up winning. Davis has gained 6.1 strokes putting, which were all in the first round. He gained 0 in the second round. So that's how he's at -8. Hopefully he got his shit together on the back 9 on Friday because he was a disaster. Him and Rose. Like, Rose was so bad on the greens. But Zalatoris is the one I want to look at first. So Zalatoris, the approach was positive. Okay, that's good. Driving really wasn't there. He's working through a new swing right now to alleviate some of the pressure on his back. So that could take a little bit longer to show up. But a lot of this, especially round 1 in the win, this turned either into a big driver course or a big less than driver course, depending on which way that you were playing the win. So we can see in round 1, we just go to round 1 stats and take a look at Z. So Zalatoris lost 1.5 strokes off the tee in round 1, gained a stroke and a half on approach. That's really nice to see. So the short game is going to be the rustiest because that's what you need to do in competitive play in order to come back. And frankly, taking a look at the Sony Open, it's not that the course wasn't in good shape, but it looked like they grew out the rough was 3 inches long. Like, even the first cut of rough was, a little bit dicey. So the conditions were not as ideal and as angelic as they usually are in your second tournament in Honolulu. Like, they made this tough. I appreciate that. I like seeing that in a tournament, but that stuff comes back a little bit later because around the green and putting tends to be more feel than anything else. This is a positive sign that he gained on approach, at least in one round. Let's go to round 2 and see how Zalatoris did there. So Zal there, so bad on approach, improved his off the tee a little bit, and all of a sudden the feel started to come back a little bit. So I don't know if I'm going to get there on Zalatoris this week. You can never find the Zalatoris when you need to, right? It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle, man, and you need to figure it out for the women. And that way, you can excite the Zalatoris, and all of a sudden, he can get himself going again, and he can climax to the very top of the leaderboard. I don't think that the American Express is going to be the one for him, but again, we'll continue to track his progress to see how he does. So we can see little flashes, little glimpses here, but even gaining a stroke and a half on approach for one round in a tournament, after taking such a long layoff, I don't really consider the Hero like a real tournament. 16 people like Tiger's friends. It was a wind-filled course. It was a little bit tougher this year, but it's a nothing tournament. This is a real event with real rough against real competition trying to make a cut and added pressure that goes along with that. So if we can see improvement in the game starting to normalize a little bit, that would be nice. So I'm off at the American Express, and it's more of a wait-and-see approach once again. But positive signs for Zalatoris from the Sony Open. A little glimmer of hope from him. Additionally, when I guessed the odds last week, I took a tonny. I think I might actually have to throw in one guess for some player that people like that is so egregious that it makes people mad on the internet. Now, I was dead serious. I thought that Zalatoris was going to open at 100-1 for the Sony Open. I was way off. He opened at 30-1, but here's the thing. I just figured no one would want to bet Zalatoris, and the books would know that, so they would put him at 100-1. That is not what happened. The inverse happened. They put him at 30-1. No one wanted to bet it because that number was stupid, and he closed at 100-1. I couldn't believe it. But that's not where he opened, so I was 70 points off on that. and then it ended up being right at the end, but I'm not guessing the end, I'm guessing the openers with a lot of this stuff. It's funny because some of my openers were weirdly where players ended up by the end of the week. I was just wrong because I had overinflated what they were going to be at open, where you had Rose open at 55 and Nick Taylor open at 100. You know, they close at 35. They close at 45 or 50, whatever it might be, where I was what I thought the open would be. It's funny how odds can work that way. So hopefully the books are very generous to us and give us a bit longer odds again this week when I go to the guesses. And I think that they will, mainly because Scheffler is in the field and he kind of has to be 6-1 or better. And once you have a player that is 6-1 or better, maybe 3 guys hovering around 10-1 or lower, then inevitably everyone else just has to be pushed farther down that list. So that's very interesting to look at, to me at least. So that's what Zalatoris was up to. Let's take a look at Woodland. Woodland in round 2, terrible on approach, lost across the board. In round 1, Woodland gained a stroke on approach, so that's pretty good, and then had bad feel around the greens. It's going to be like, I have more confidence that Zalatoris is going to turn it around versus someone like Gary Woodland. Just not to say that Gary Woodland is washed, but he just had brain surgery. He had hip surgery the season previous. He hadn't really been good basically since he won the U.S. Open in 2019. So it's been a while for him, and he's an aging player where the other one is revamping his swing, is a younger player who, if he could just figure out how to putt, would be a lot better. So that's kind of my take on it. But Woodland, you're going to get at better odds. You're going to get better DraftKings prices. So if you could figure out a way to kind of time it with him to be good, if you could get him coming back, that would be great. Round 2, sometimes I like to take a look at this. I forget every single week kind of to do it. Guys who got cut but may have had a very good round 2. So you can see Lipsky finished at 6 over par. Someone who finished inside the top 10 at this tournament a year ago, gained the most strokes on approach of anyone in the field in round 2, but lost 4.8 strokes on the green and 3 strokes around the green. That is unbelievable. That's a case of got it going bads at the moment. Grayson Murray. If you're watching this before the start of round 3 or even after round 3, so going into the final round or the third round at the Sony Open, there's everyone in the field is at least 7 shots within the lead. So a lot of players, depending on where you're going right now and different sports books where you're betting it, are offering top 5s, 10s, 20s, 40s, whatever. Not a lot of 40s. Let's be honest here. Top 5, 10, and 20 with a lot of guys. I bet Martin Trainer and Garrick Higo, 2 guys who can get like super hot out of nowhere. And I re-upped on Nick Taylor for all of those bets. Or I re-upped on him at 300-1 with an each way, but I played the top 10 and top 20 as well because they're giving away like 60-1 on top 10s. Like these are guys that can shoot 62. I'm not saying they are going to shoot 62, and it doesn't need to be those players for you specifically. If there are players that you like from the back of the pack, there are some generous odds right now for top 5s, top 10s, top 20s at the sportsbook going into the weekend, mainly because the names at the top are good. It's Chris Kirk, it's Ben Ann, it's Cam Davis, it's crazy Carl Wan. It's not Scotty Scheffler, all right? Like guys can come back from the back of the pack. Hideki did it 2 years ago with the 63-63. Siwoo did it with the 64-64 a year ago. Like guys have good weekends and put themselves back into contention, not only to win, but really elevate themselves up the leaderboard. So I thought it was a good thing to go look at some of these deeper odds. I encourage you to go do the same thing. We can take a look at some of the stuff on Fantasy National to see if there are guys that can go do that. Now, Grayson Murray, who's in 4th place, probably is not going to have 60-1 to come inside the top 10. That would just be my thought. I could probably go look at it, but you know what? I don't. I can say that with a lot of confidence. But there probably are guys at the back who can do that. Bhatia been doing pretty well. Seamus Power is a prime example. Gained a bunch on approach, couldn't make a putt for shit on Friday, but going into the weekend, he's 7 shots off the lead. Now I need to take a look at DraftKings Sportsbook. DraftKings Sportsbook, just for reference here, because Seamus Power is a bigger name than a lot of these people who are back at the bottom. So let's go to golf. Let's go to Sony Open. And this is more of just an indicator of maybe something that you can do throughout the course of the weeks, depending on what tournament it is. Yeah, Seamus Power, what is that? Is that a top 10? Yeah, top 10 for Seamus Power is 50-1 right now. That's a pretty good number. And if you can keep firing at these over time, yeah, he has a lot of work to do, and this is playing as an easier course. But It's going to be a little bit tougher than it normally is. Like the winning score is probably not going to be minus 25. The winning score is probably going to be, let's say minus 17. Let's say minus 18, just for, to see what we're talking about with all of this. And if it's minus 18, he's at minus 2. What does he have to shoot to have a feasible chance of coming inside the top 10? So if he goes 66, 66, that puts him at 10 under, then he has no chance. But if he goes 64, 64, and he finishes at 14 under, that's probably good for a top 10, or at least it's right on the periphery. Is that worth a 50-1 to you? What if he goes 62, 64 or 63, 63? I don't know. That'd be the way that I look at it. Talented players who may or may not be in, like guys that we know that historically can go low or have something popping up, like good approach on Friday going into it. So that's just what I would look at. Shez Reavie was also cut, gained a bunch of strokes over 2 on approach going into Friday. Who else got cut? Streelman had a very good approach round. So did Teeter. Callum Tarrant were up there as well. Where was Harry Hall on this list? Because I know that Hall was one of them. Harry Hall, yeah, they're not giving as generous of odds, although he's not starting in the same spot as everyone else. But 75-1 on a top 5, 22-1 on the top 10. He's having a very good week in terms of approach versus putting, if that's what you wanted to look at. Anyone else missed the cut here? Played pretty well. We can take a look at the entire tournament as well of just the guys who got cut. So most guys who got cut did not play well. Streelman, good on approach. Fitzpatrick, good on approach, bad at everything else. The first victim of the Andrew curse this year was the betting favorite, Matthew Fitzpatrick. Good to know. Smalley was, oh my God, I didn't realize he lost almost 6 strokes putting and gained 4.5, almost 5 tee to green. Wow. He really took himself out of it down the stretch. He 3-putted the last hole to miss the cut. And he was one of the guys who could have potentially moved the cut at one point. So with Svensson, the approach was one of the best in the field. So I wouldn't be too concerned about him moving forward. Just kind of a bad go. And those were all the guys that have been cut. So those were the ones I really wanted to dig into as it pertained to this tournament. So what I think that we can do now is probably build out the model for the tournament. I don't have a model. Well, I have a model for this tournament, but I don't think it's been good over the years, so I thought I'd try to build one on the fly, and maybe I'll rejig this in the newsletter, or maybe people in the comments or in the Spotify comment section can let me know what they're looking at this week, or how they would construct a model, because that's always the fun part about this. There's no right answer when you're trying to construct what stats, and even if you construct the best stats, it's not going to necessarily lead you to a winner. So here's what I had previously. It was just kind of a bleh of everything. So you had strokes gained off the tee, strokes gained on approach, strokes gained par 3, par 4, par 5, with different weights. You can see it up on the screen right now. Sand saves at 5%, proximity 150 to 175 at 10%, fairways and opportunities at 10%, 5 to 10, 10 to 15 foot putting. All right, let's get rid of all of this. Just say screw it. Let's try to figure out something else. So if we take a look, and this will be in the column, of just how winners have done. And looking at only winners isn't always the best way to go about this, only because, did they have an outlier week? But if we just take a look at 2022, for example, when Hudson Swafford won, 6 of the top 10 finishers either lost strokes putting at the stadium course or around the green. You just can't lose in both spots. All right, that's interesting to know. Each of the top 8 finishers gained stroke from 10 to 15 feet. Okay. I mean, that's one that's stickier too. I remember Brendan DeGula and I went through that show. That's on Mayo Media Network. And we talked about the stickiness of putting and where that goes. 5 of the top 6 finishers gained off the tee at the stadium course. Swafford was the only one who did without doing that, coming inside the top 6, but he ran pure with the putter at that. He RPS'd the putter at the PGA West Stadium. So again, that's just different things that you can look into. Siwoo was 2.5 strokes better than anyone tee to green at the stadium course. He was also 5th in proximity from 75 to 100. Andrew Landry was top 12, both tee to green and putting, and led the field in good drives gains. So there's a lot of different things. So we need to figure out a way to put in aggressiveness into this model would be the first thing that I would want to look at. So approach is obviously going to make a difference. So we'll throw in approach, but we're not going to weight it a ton because we're going to use different approach numbers to try to figure this out. I think opportunities gained is going to be the biggest stat that I want to look at. If you're unfamiliar with opportunities gained, it is a fantasy national stat that means 20 feet and in for as a birdie or eagle chance from on the green or on the fringe. So scoring opportunities, birdie and eagle opportunities. If I could find it, that would be much easier for me. There it is, opportunities gained. So after opportunities gained, we're going to throw in that key proximity range that we looked at before. That was 150 to 175. I had also made mention that 200 plus is going to be pretty key as well when we take a look at everything. So we'll throw in that proximity percentage to range as well, and that's why we're not going to weight opportunities gained, because we have these three stats which are all basically approach stats. So we won't weight that as much, but we'll give the overall weighting to approach as we try to discern between a lot of these. Now, these aren't long courses, but because of the forced layups, you don't see a lot. There's more of a broad range of wedges between like 75 and 125 yards, or 50 and 125 yards. So we don't really have one all-encompassing thing to take a look at that. The par threes we thought were important, but I do want to throw in both eagles gained and par fives very quickly into this. So we're going to go eagles gained, because we saw at one of these courses at least 4% of the field making eagles. Well, it's not the best stat to look at. It will give you a sense of guys that do it at a higher rate than others, and maybe that's something that we can look at more over time. That's a better stat for past 75 rounds than it is for past 12 rounds, because then it becomes more dependent on the par fives that you've played over the past 12 rounds versus a larger sample, which would just give you a better sense of who is good at those things. That's also where the mixed condition model can come into play as well, where you can throw that stat over a longer period of time into the mixed condition model for that stat by itself. It just takes longer to do. It's not conducive with doing a show as we're doing right now. So we're going to throw that in there. Eagles gained, par fives gained, good drives gained is the other way that we're going to go with, because that will give us both approach and driving all in the same. So now we have these. Let's throw in our putting stats. There's more you could throw into this, but I think just on a very rudimentary level, this is where I want to look. And I'm going to weight putting a little bit more than I normally do. I'm going to give it a 15% full weighting, and I'm going to put the 8% at this 15 to 20 range, 10 to 15 range. So we'll go 5 to 10, 7%. That's where we'll start with this new one. And then we'll go 8% for 10 to 15. This is just the order that I like to put them in so I can see sort of the correlating stats all go next to each other. So we're going to go 10% with approaches. I want aggression here. So I want 20% opportunities gained. And we'll go 10% key bucket, 10% key bucket for both 150 to 175 and 200 plus. Eagles gained at 5%, par fives at 5%. And what do we got left here? Let's go up. I wish my mouse would work a little bit better. Oh, we still have 25% to allocate here. So there's a lot that we can do with this. So let's go back down. We'll go 15% good drives gained, or we'll go 15% good drives gained, and we're going to put fairways gained into the mix as well. So we'll go down to fairways gained. We'll chuck that in at 5%. And I believe that should get us up to 95%. So we have 5% to allocate somewhere else. You know what? I'm just going to bump up putting to 10%, and we're good to go. So this is more weighting than I usually give putting in any tournament. However, it's a fucking putting contest, so let's see what the results are going to be of this. I'm guessing Scheffler is going to be number one, and I have it set to the past 50 rounds right now. And hopefully we can find some sleepers in the field here. Just basically any reason not to bet Xander, Cantlay, or Scheffler is all I'm looking for. Like, in my mind, Sungjae and Tom Kim seem to be the best ideas right now. So let's see. Xander, Cantlay, Gim, Fowler, Berger. Now, again, Berger stats are from 2022, so take those with a grain of salt. So those are your top four. Now you have your top five, sorry. Then you have Scheffler, Bez, Ryder, and then Michael Kim coming in next with Mark Hubbard. Then you have Shank as well. Coming in at number 11 here, Eckroat, who's having a good run this week at the Sony. Eric Cole, Aaron Rye, Ryan Moore. Ryan Moore missed the cut. So did Chez Reavie. But Chez Reavie, in that longer frame, does rate out at number 16. I believe he has won this tournament. It may have been like 15 years ago, but I do believe he won when it was, the Bob Hope? He came 5th the Bob Hope in 2023. The Career Builder. American Express. The American Express. It's hard to know what they call these tournaments when you change names, and that's the crappy part. We have to kind of go. No, he's won the Travelers, and he won the Canadian Open. I swear to God, I thought he won this tournament. Let's see. Bob Hope Classic Wiki. Our numbers only go... The Desert Classic is what it was called at that time. Maybe that's what it's called again. Who knows? I thought it was called the American Express, so that's what I'm going with. Did he win this event? Chez Reavie. Mike Weir, Phil, Leonard... Trahan, Vegas. No, he didn't. No, the stats on Fantasy National were correct. He has not won this tournament. You do see a lot of guys who play well. He won did he win in Phoenix? Did he win in Phoenix or did he lose to Woodland? He must have lost because it's only showing me the Travelers win. And what was the other one he had? The Canadian Open win in 2008. Good for him, Chez Reavie. Anyway, he rates out pretty well over the past 50 rounds. Other guys that we can look at... that's just strokes gained total, so that's not what we want to look at. There we go. Eagles gained over that longer train. Toasty! In only 14 rounds. That's going to be one of my guys. I thought I was going to go with Adrien Dumont Duchâtel. He was terrible at the Sony Open. Not that I'm getting off of him. And then we have Pearson Cooney. And he lost to his brother this week, so that's never any good. Goddard's a former guy of mine, but Toasty... Just like this guy. He was meditating on the green so he didn't lose his fucking mind when his partners were playing slow. I want to see him lose his mind. Semikawa actually playing quite well, too, at the Sony. Different course, obviously, because driving does come more into play here. But Matty Schmidt up there in Eagles. Min Woo up there in Eagles. Vegas, who's a former winner here, is up here in Eagles. Lee Hodges up in Eagles. Another guy who's finished top 10 or top 5 at this tournament in the past. So again, different ways that we can take a look at this past 50 rounds wise. I want to shrink this down to let's go past 12 and just see if we can catch lightning in a bottle with anyone. Then we can look at the rolling report to see if any more names pop up. But I do like seeing Toasty up there to begin with. So past 12 right now. What do we got going on here? Why don't you load past 12 in the custom model? That's what I get when the servers are updating and trying to do this. Let's see. Berger, number 1 over the past 12 rounds. Sam Ryder. Okay, Poston, Hadley ends up there as well. So Cole, along with Xander, Cantley, and Scheffler. No surprise. Gim, Ben Griffin, the Smother Man. Great from these key proximity ranges in the short term, so maybe not as sticky as maybe we think. Lowry, Damon, stupid Damon, Rio, Hishato. I'm going to learn how to say his name for next week. That's going to be a goal of mine, to learn how to pronounce that last name. But our guy, Ryu H, continues to be up there. He, too, made the cut. Matty Schmidt. Now, in the short term, up there as well. Lindheim, Eckroat. So, let's see. Montgomery, Eckroat, Toasty, Jaeger. These are the sorts of guys that I probably want to go to this week. Matty Schmidt from the lower end. I don't know if they're going to get outright bets from me with the strength at the top of this field. Nasty Nate Lashley is another one to look at. I have no idea how he has been doing, but just generally guys that play well in Phoenix, play well in desert golf. Nate Lashley tends to be one of those guys. Was 10th in Mexico. No idea how he did at the Sony. I suppose that's something you can look at yourself when you take a look at the Sony. And how has he done at the American Express? The American Express. Missed the cut. The Desert Classic. All right, we're not even doing that. I wonder if it is actually called the Desert. I'm pretty sure it's still called the American Express. Has to be. I don't know what Wikipedia is up to. Weird old Wikipedia. Rolling report is the last thing that I want to look at before we guess the odds on this one, and I want to take a look at the custom modeling. Again, you can go in and build. I did that last week. I would actually like to have some feedback. I mean, the feedback that I got on that was very positive. I released 2 newsletter updates last week, and that was just to test out to see if people actually like the different things. But I think I put in like 8 or so different views from Fantasy National, corollary courses, recent form, custom model, different courses to put together, different skill sets to put together, and put them all into one mixed condition model to see what it said. I don't know if people like that column or not. if you did, let me know. If you didn't, let me know as well, because I don't want to waste time on something that people don't actually want to see. If it is something that you want to see more of, just please let me know, and that's something that I can try to put into the mix, maybe for larger tournaments or majors, whatever it might be. I'm just looking to try out some new content. It's 2024. We can't just do the same thing every week in perpetuity. We need to try different things out. That is one that I had a lot of fun doing on a Tuesday night. Maybe I won't always have, or a Monday night, sorry. Maybe I won't always have that much time on my hands, but I had a lot of fun doing the research. It was an important part of my process this week. I'm going to have a good week. It's just how good of a week am I going to have depends on where those guys finish at the very, very top of the leaderboard. Anyway, if you like it, let me know. You can always reply to the newsletter when you sub to it. You can tweet at me. You can leave it in the comment section, the Spotify comment section, wherever it may be. So here's our rolling report. So the best player over the past 8 rounds, again, Berger's numbers are from way back. Xander Cantlay, Tom Kim, Shane Lowry, Smotherman, Sam Ryder, Ryu, Matthew Smith, another guy who could have moved the cup but didn't. That's the short term. That's who's looking good. And you can see guys over the long term are still up there. Smotherman gets a lot better once we shrink down the sample size. Ryu, Neesmith, and Kirk, ditto for them, getting a lot better. Noren, Damon, Bezadenhout all get a lot better shorter term than they were longer term. Landry, Vince Whaley, Chad Ramey, and Matty Schmidt also are ones that do well. Ditto with Taylor Pendrith. Now let's kind of do the inverse of that. Let's go and look at past 100 rounds to see who's a little bit worse now. You can see Tom Kim, although over his past 8, he's great. Past 12, we'll use past 12 as the sample size here versus past 100. So he's 46th in his past 12. He is 5th over the past 100 rounds. So keep that in mind. Has won Desert Golf at the Shriners, the past 2 years. So should be a good look this week. And you might get a decent odds break on him because of some of the other players that are in this field. Who else has fallen? Zalatoris has fallen. Justin Thomas has fallen, who was 10th down to 55th. Fowler, 11th past 100, 84th past 12. Smalley, 12th to 79th. That should update with his good approach stats. Siwoo, 16th to 148th in these key stats. We'll see how he ends up doing at the Sony. He's in the mix. Reeve falls down a little bit as well. So does Chris Gotterup, Nick Taylor, Adam Hadwin, Lee Hodges. It's funny, all guys that played generally well at this tournament. So it's funny to think about in that way. Well, it's time for everyone's favorite part of the show. It is Guess the Odds for the American Express this week. I have it separated into 2 categories. We'll try to do this in real time and adjust it a little bit as we go along. The first 2 that I wanted to start with were Will Zalatoris and Daniel Berger. I have Zalatoris 75 to 1. Maybe that's going to watch this be too high this time, watch it be 100 to 1. But based on where the market wanted to put him versus where he ended up, I think they'll overinflate him and then bring him back throughout the course of the week. So 75 to 1 open for Will Zalatoris, in my guess, at least. Daniel Berger, 200 to 1, I'm guessing. It might be even beyond that. Like, we haven't seen the dude in 18 months, coming off of a back injury. It's not a great spot to be if you're Daniel Berger, so I'll say 200 to 1. So I think there's a big 3 and then a big part of a big 8 in terms of the betting odds, although some of these guys could blend together. So you have Scheffler, Xander, and Cantlay as your big 3 at the American Express. I'm going to say Scotty is 5 to 1, Cantlay is 9, and Xander is 10. Now, because I have all those guys at 10 or below, that does give us a little bit of breathing room with the next set of guys. So I'm going to say that Tom Kim is 18 to 1, Sung Jae is 18 to 1, praying that both those guys cross 20. If they both cross 20, they'll probably be my 2 bets for the week. Wyndham Clark I'll have at 25. Finau I'll have at 25. Sam Burns, 28 to 1. Ricky Fowler, probably a bit more down. I'll say 35 for Ricky. No one bets it, and he falls into the 40s. But I'll say he opens at 35 to 1. Chris Kirk, again, I'm doing this before we know the conclusion of the Sony. If he wins at the Sony, he's going to be like 15 to 1, 16 to 1, something like that. I'll say at the moment, if just say he doesn't win but finishes top 5 at the Sony, I'm going to say that he's 28 to 1 because he'll have a win, a top 5, and an excellent record at least a year ago, or at least within the past 3 years at PGA West. So Chris Kirk will stay at 28 to 1. Lowry, playing for the first time this year, will open at 35 to 1. Min, woo! Lee, who had the win in Australia and then had another top 5 in Australia to close the season, getting his first start. Has played some good desert golf in his past. I don't know how the books are going to treat him. I could see him opening a little bit higher and then getting beat down right away. I'll go 40-1, and if it opens there, I will probably bet him. See, Kim, the winner in 2021. We'll say 45-1 for Siwoo. Jason Day, we'll say 35-1. And then Eric Cole. I can't believe Eric Cole is a part of this conversation, but he continues to get boosted by the odds that are up there. I'll say that Eric Cole opens at 45-1. The same as Siwoo, probably the same as Denny McCarthy, and that style of player as well. So to recap the big three, Scotty at 5, Xander at 10, Cantlay at 9, Kim and Tom Kim, that is, 18-1 and 18-1. Clark and Finau both at 25. Sam Burns at 28. Chris Kirk at 28. And you know what? I'll actually say Ricky Fowler at 30, just because he's Ricky Fowler, and people love to bet on Ricky Fowler. Obviously, the results of the Sony Open and guys playing in both fields may impact that, but I'm not from the future. I cannot possibly know that. But here we are. Thank you all for watching the research show. Become a member at fantasynational.com right now. fantasynational.com/Mayo to get 20% off. I told you about the Ship It Nation draw for a free membership for the year. You sign up with any of their golf programs right now and use code Mayo. You get 10% off and then you get put in that draw as well. We're announcing the winner on Tuesday. You can smash like, sub to the channel, and that will do it for me. Sub to the newsletter, because that's where the column will be with more of a concise version of what we just talked through, plus even more and some visuals to go along with it and the bets that we do. That will do it for me. Tune in Monday with me and Feinberg. I'll see you then.
Mayo experience! Experience!